I conducted my survey online through SurveyMonkey. This made it accessible and convenient for both me and the people who were going to answer it. They weren't pressured to give certain answers as they might have been if I was standing with them, possibly. The questions were: what is your age? What is your gender? When choosing a film to watch, what genre do you usually prefer? In trailers, what elements do you take the most notice of? Do you have a favourite crime film, and if so, for what reasons? If not, please state NA. In a crime film, what elements do you find the most enjoyable? For example, action scenes, unusual cinematic styles. How often is it that after watching a trailer, you pay to see the film in cinema upon its release? Are there any typical elements that you think make a film trailer of any genre redundant of its intended effect or appeal? Are there any elements you would like to see in a new crime film trailer? I kept the types of questions fairly mixed. Some were open and some were closed, just depending on what kind of data I wanted. Most of this was qualitative data, apart from where I asked questions like number 7, where I gave multiple choice for how often they went to cinema. I tried to make sure my questions were as clear as possible. If I used any jargon words such as cinematography or pacing, I put the meaning in brackets, which prevented any confusion. The age question was fairly straightforward. I left it as an open question rather than a multiple choice of age ranges or brackets, because I wanted to be able to calculate an average. It was a very simple calculation. I just used the method of finding the mean. I added all of the values together and then divided them by how many values there were. So this became 200 divided by 10, which is 20, and that was my average age. I think this is appropriate for the age certificate, but we might target a slightly younger audience because quite a few of our responses were 17, and we don't want to exclude anyone. And my group and I think it is likely that the trailer won't show excessive gore, which you may see in a film that has a certificate of 18. So the age certificate will probably be ages 15 and above. The question of gender was pretty important. I kept the questions open with a comment box so I could be as inclusive as possible if someone didn't conform to the binaries. I knew this question would tell me who I need to target my film towards. But I actually got 5 males and 5 females. So I got pretty equal opinion. My prediction that it would be predominantly male as an audience was false. Although the sample size was very small, as it was only 10 people that answered my survey. So it won't be very accurate because it can't represent everyone. A bigger sample size may produce different results. I remember that in my secondary audience research, a lot of the audiences for other crime films and TV shows were male, or represented as being mainly male. So my next question was the preferred genre of film, like if they were going to watch one, which genre would they usually pick? So I had these categories for my audience to choose from: romance, comedy, horror, thriller, western, fantasy, animation, musical, crime, adventure, drama, science fiction, hybrid, such as rom-coms or comedy horrors, and finally other. The hybrids would cover anyone who preferred a more unconventional genre. However, this may have been more suitable for an other please specify option. From the graph we can see that 20% prefer crime, another 20% prefer adventure, 10% prefer comedy, 10% prefer fantasy, and 10% prefer drama. So this question was more to gauge my audience's general preferences in films. It also meant that if I was interested in a particular member's answers to the more extensive questions later on, or they didn't have much of an opinion for the questions about crime, I would be able to view their responses and see why. For instance, the one person out of 10 respondents who prefers comedy may not have a favourite crime film for that reason. The next question was the elements of the trailer that the respondents find most noticeable. I wanted to find out what elements of trailers my audience pays the most attention to. I gave the options of pacing, how fast or slow the action is, cinematography, the way in which it is shot, actors and actresses, the narrative or plot, visual or special effects, editing, dialogue, or other, please specify. Again, I made sure to clarify any jargon I use so that it wouldn't be confusing to anyone who's not familiar with the terms. 3 out of 10 said that they pay most attention to actors and actresses, 2 out of 10 said they pay most attention to the narrative or plot, and a further 2 out of 10 said they pay most attention to the pacing. The remaining 3 people said they paid most attention to cinematography, visual effects, and dialogue, respectively. This tells me that in my trailer I should be keeping the elements of stars, the narrative and the plot, and pacing at the highest priority in order to attract my audience's attention and keep them engaged. My narrative should therefore be exciting, my actors and actresses need to be credible and realistic, and the pacing should be very precise. In crime trailers, I noticed that they seem to increase dramatically in pace nearing the end, so I could try to incorporate this adrenaline rush feel in my own. The only problem I have with the response about actors and actresses being the most noticeable is that because of my budget, I may not be able to acquire such popular actors and actresses. So I'll have to stick with the less well-known ones, but make up for it by having an exciting plot and cinematography and everything else that they said they found most noticeable. Next, I asked about favourite crime films. This question helped me to compile an audience profile later on in my research and planning. By seeing their favourite crime film, if they mentioned one, I was able to research similar tastes they may have using a website called YouGov Profiles. Hence the fact that many of these films the respondents named are in a collage I made for my audience profile. One answer I didn't consider using was Hot Fuzz, because although I knew the film myself, and it is a favourite of mine as well, I knew that since it is a crime and comedy hybrid, it may not be as relevant to my research, or by extension the rest of my audience. Next, I asked about favourite elements of crime films. For this question I gave an example of what elements they might describe, but left it as an open comment box, both because I may not be equipped to provide all possible options, and so my respondents could speak freely. As you can see, most respondents mentioned a preference for scenes with lots of action and explicit violence, with plot twists and climaxes. However, a few diverged from the norm and suggested unusual camera angles and a defined cinematic style. This suggests that my group and I should be aiming to appeal to an audience that enjoys action scenes as part of the iconography associated with the crime genre, but we should also employ unusual techniques to create an intriguing, exciting trailer that shows that our film subverts conventions, unlike the many high-concept mainstream films of today. I then asked my audience how often they go to the cinema after seeing a trailer, regardless of the platform that they see it on. 30% said often, another 30% said rarely, 20% said most of the time, and 10% said always and never, respectively. Because trailers are so diverse, and I didn't ask the respondents why they wouldn't see a film after watching a trailer, I can't be sure as to why so many said never, and vice versa for the option of often. It could also be a matter of the respondents' interests, as they may not go to the cinema often at all, no matter what impression a trailer had on them. However, despite this, 60% of my audience had an answer of always, most of the time, or often, which means my film still has a potential in how successful it may be in appealing to this audience. To help find out what elements may dissuade the audience from seeing a film, for my next question I asked what they found made trailers redundant of their intended effect or appeal. The answers I got to this question were very diverse, but this helps because it means I now have a comprehensive list of what doesn't appeal to my audience, and therefore what I shouldn't use. For example, one respondent said, when the whole plot is revealed in a trailer. This is quite relevant to my group's aims for our trailer. In our planning so far, we have been keen to keep the trailer as enigmatic as possible. Another respondent gave a similar response and said that some trailers use too many clips, which means there is nothing left to see. Which tells me that how we present our film and the events we choose to show are immensely important. We don't want our audience to feel as if the whole plot has been spoilt or that it's predictable. Additionally, a drawback to that question was that the way I phrased it may have not been clear enough, as one respondent said soundtrack and another said editing, without any explanation. This makes me think they might not have fully understood what I was asking, and I should have made the phrasing more simple. Finally, I wanted to know what elements our audience would be attracted to in a new, fresh crime film trailer. Again, the answers to this question were very diverse, but I found a running theme of a want for mystery and intrigue. For example, one respondent said, suspicious character types in crime films make the movie a lot more interesting. Another said, make it vague, but having short clips that intrigue the viewer. And another said, I would like to see a new crime film trailer that keeps me guessing and makes me curious. Clearly, my audience is one that appreciates a trailer but is enigmatic and compelling in that it doesn't reveal too much about characters or plot and leaves some elements of the film to their own imagination. Similarly, one respondent mentioned that there is an overuse of shock factor techniques and that they would rather that there was more content on the storyline. In this, I think they're referring to trailers that concentrate on shocking the viewer with the wow factor rather than taking the time to make the viewer interested in its characters and plot. I think the general opinion on this technique is that it's lazy, and so we should try not to over-dramatise our trailer and keep things mysterious. So, those were my survey results. I think that they're going to impact my work a lot. Maybe not with some of the question, because as I mentioned, it was a very small sample size, and so it can't represent everyone. But I think I'll definitely keep referring back to it and make sure that I do keep that mysterious, intriguing, cinematic sort of style to my trailer, because these responses have been so useful.